Hi everyone! Today I'm unofficially taking part in the YouTube artist collective theme Urban Legends from the artist's home country. And just a warning before we get into the video. This will be darker than my usual videos, so if you don't want to hear the ghost stories, I'll add a timestamp below so you can skip to the part where I talk about the painting process and the supplies I used. I started by reserving a bunch of books from the library about Finnish urban legends, folk tales and ghost stories. Urban legend by definition is a modern folklore, so I ruled out the older folk tales, although I think I might use some of those for future illustrations because I find the stories with witches and animals quite inspiring. I think this theme is kind of funny in a way, because although the urban legends you hear can be set in a certain city, many of them are just recycled from other countries, and the city and related buildings and so on have been changed to be specific to your country. Nevertheless, I'll tell you a few urban legends from Finland which relate to certain mansions in Tampere and Turku, including the story that inspired this painting. Our first urban legend is about the Brinkhall mansion in Turku that was built in the 16th century. There are multiple ghost stories about this one mansion, and I found them in a book about haunted houses and human fates. There's a haunted nursery where a ghost has been seen outside the window, and later a skeleton of a child, a small girl, was found buried in front of the same window. There's also a blonde woman that's been seen walking or floating around the park by the apple trees. Then there's a gardener's house in the courtyard, and one of the past gardeners had ended his life in the attic of that house. They refused to bury his body in the sacred land, which made the ghost of the gardener haunt the house and especially the attic, which has an oppressive atmosphere according to the people who have visited the house. Next, the urban legend related to this painting. I was reading through a book about Finnish ghost stories, and this story stuck out to me because I could immediately see the painting I'd make in my head. There may have been other interesting stories, but they didn't spark an idea for a painting. So there's a mansion in Haijara in the city of Tampere in Finland, and it was built in the 1870s, so almost 150 years ago. There was a maid working in the mansion, and she fell in love with one of the guests of the mansion. Eventually she was expecting a child, but the man didn't want to marry her. And at that point in time, being a single mother was considered shameful, and she was desperate and saw no way out but to run to the lake near the mansion and drown herself. Her ghost is called the Blue Maiden, and to this day the ghost can be seen and heard moving in the park of the mansion. Some versions of the legend even say that as she was running to the lake, she tripped and broke her legs, so her ghost floating in the park is also legless. If you're a Finnish speaker and want to research this ghost, she's called Sininen Neito. I haven't been to either of these mansions I was talking about, but I have been at the Turku Castle, which is another haunted place. It's an old prison with a violent history. However, at the time I didn't know about the ghost stories surrounding it, and the only thing I found spooky was the way that the guides of the museum, dressed in an old-fashioned way, were standing or sitting in the halls so quietly that you were startled when you realized that's actually a real person. I do have one strange experience that happened a while ago that I can't explain logically, but I'll save that one for another video because it might take a while to explain. Finally, let's talk about the painting process a bit. So I started by drawing small rough sketches, and when I knew somewhat what I wanted the composition to look like, I combined 3 photos into a reference picture and used the grid method to sketch it in real size. I used different photos for the building, the position of the girl and her face. And I also looked up references for the trees, the color of the sky, and dresses that maids would wear in the 19th century. My laptop was still being repaired while I made this painting, and I needed to use online software to do the photo editing. So I combined the photos with folklore.com, and I added the grid on the picture using griddrawingtool.com, which was very simple to use. So that's a tip if you're using a university or work or a public computer where you don't have a permission to install any programs. You can use browser-based software like that instead. I list the programs I use below. I painted this on an A4 size canvas board, and I taped 2 A4 papers together for the sketch, which I then transferred onto the canvas board with graphite transfer paper. I was worried about the graphite sketch smudging the acrylic paints, so I sealed the sketch using matte medium before starting the actual painting. I list all the supplies I used below. Matte medium is basically acrylic paint without any pigment, so it creates a clear coat on top of the sketch. But on the other hand, you won't be able to erase the sketch afterwards, so make sure you're happy with it before sealing it with matte medium. I had a bit of a problem with this because I sketched the tears on the outer corners of the eye, and then it was pointed out to me that they probably shouldn't be there. But I couldn't erase the sketch anymore, so I had to layer acrylic paint on the tears to cover up the sketch and paint the tears in the inner corners of the eyes and down the middle. I started by painting the easiest parts, which were the sky, the mansion and the hill, and the spruce trees in the background. And then I moved on to the girl and the water. I'm pretty happy with how the dress and the reflections on the water turned out, but I was kind of struggling with the hair, and I didn't even film much of it. I also had to look up how to paint tears, but I ended up just painting them with watery acrylic dripping down and adding a few dots of white for highlights once they were dry. I used a limited color scheme of blues and light yellow, and I shaded the girl with blue to tie her to the background and also to make her skin look pale like a ghost. Although technically I don't think she's a ghost at this point. This is her while she's still alive. As I mentioned in the beginning, this was my unofficial painting for the YouTube Artist Collective, and if you want to know more about the collective and how to take part in the current or upcoming themes, or see the previous themes all listed out and maybe use them as ideas for your own art, I link to a blog post I wrote where you can find all of that information. I'm also making a playlist of all the videos for this urban legend theme, so you can easily find all of them in the same place, both the official members' videos as well as the unofficial ones. If you're new to my channel, I post a new video every week, sometimes twice a week. My videos include tips and tutorials for artists, as well as relaxing real-time ASMR art videos. And prints and stickers and other merch of this painting and my other artworks are available in my Redbubble shop. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next week. Bye!